This is An Infinite Path, spoken word essays by Niles Heckman, some of which go on to become our documentary short subject films, half of which release freely here through the podcast, all of which can be found through your support at nilesheckman.com. This essay is extremely relevant to you if you don't have perfect 20/20 vision and thus wear eyeglasses or perhaps contact lenses. Speaking of 20/20 and being able to see more clearly, back in February of that year, there was an episode of The Higher Side Chats, Greg Carlwood's interview-based podcast dedicated to exploring a wide range of unconventional, suppressed, and esoteric topics that was yet another layer of the onion which helped open our eyes. It was with a bloke named Jake Steiner regarding eyesight, myopia, optometry, and the $100 billion business that is the eyeglass industry. Now, some of you may be thinking, here we go again, another essay tearing into society and capitalism, as many of your essays, Niles, are just the same thing over and over again regarding the basic stoner idea of stick it to the man or down with the man. Now, we just want to clarify that at no point have we ever said we think capitalism is 100% evil and should be completely abolished. If we were the Ayatollah or running for president of the United States, our campaign slogan would be, you guessed it, balance. As that's one of the three branches of our overarching life philosophy we call the individualization trinity, which is a common paramount theme in our work from not only the individual's life perspective, but also a larger societal perspective. For so much of what's wrong politically and economically within isms, such as capitalism, are simply issues of, well, imbalance, such as the endless disinformation and spin against a continual proving that the most egalitarian societies are those which have the most equilibrium dialed in between social and capital. As with all systems, we can acknowledge that some are better than others because they are more balanced, and some work best when blended with others. And unless these blends are logically calibrated, much of the inhabitants within such an imbalanced economic system are resulting in various forms of mental and physical imbalance. So our personal degradations of a system doesn't necessarily mean we think the whole system should go. They are instead intended to help those with ears to hear realize how these things can be more logically balanced to benefit the earth and its living inhabitants somewhat within that system, or even better, as ways of transitioning onto newer and better systems. This particular conversation served as a microcosm for the larger macrocosm of much of the world's health imbalance today, highlighting that myopia, meaning a visual defect of the eyes resulting in lack of discernment and ability to see sharply, is not what the most commonly repeated and front-lined mainstream concepts claim it to be, which is that it's genetic, that very little about it is known, and that less can be done about it. When a more accurate biological reality is that myopia is simply a refractive state, a state that is affected by an individual's environment and vision habits. Jake had discovered, after being born with particularly flawed and imperfect vision, as many of us are, that myopia can simply be prevented and even reversed through stimulus and habits. So back to our point of imbalance in our current form of non-free market capitalism, as free market capitalism actually sounds pretty decent. The world should try it sometime. That instead of our current corporate crony gangster capitalism, which, as Jordan Peterson has said, has done the best job of any system of creating wealth for, well, everyone, yes, but in its current form of imbalance has also tipped the scales in skewed ways where the inhabitants of the system's health and well-being are not its primary concern. So saying an ailment or any form of minor physical defect or even sickness can be self-cured is a highly unprofitable premise for the machine levers of the imbalanced system. In terms of this particular subject highlighted, it's also consequently unpopular with the retail lens sales establishment, which is not made up of hundreds or even thousands of small businesses all competing to serve the customer freely within some logical or rational common sense marketplace rules, but is instead that $100 billion industry highly controlled by a single monopoly, whose express aim is the most possible inflated upselling of lenses to their customer base instead of a marketplace which encourages affordable or even better natural methods. Emphasis on the natural. for natural equals nature. When we may first be told in our lives by a medical professional, and in this case an optometrist, that our eyes are defective enough to need glasses or contact lenses, we are purchasing something that industry-wise they want us to think we need for the rest of our lives. We are locked into a model where when they have you initially, because of a one-sided narrative that they, the companies, or in this case of eyeglasses, is actually one criminal cabal that's pretending to be multiple separate companies competing, which also includes a revolving door of the American Optometry Association, by the way, sells a narrative that makes it so, shocker, they have you as a customer for the rest of your life. It's the same story we've heard with many other health-related areas, isn't it? Well, with this and many other health-related areas, the money for the industry is in the ailment, not in the fixing of the ailment. For if you fix the root cause of the underlying ailment, you no longer need the product overlaying on top of the ailment. This is not hard to grasp the basic concept of in the abstract, yet the majority are not visually or mentally conscious to these patterns practically playing out within their own lives. Human beings have been needing eyeglasses for hundreds of years. When reading became more prevalent, the requirement really started spiking because of use it or lose it. So staring a large percentage of your time at a single distance makes it so your eyes evolutionarily overcorrect for just that distance. This then became more amplified by the screen staring prevalence in the modern technological world. The more one focuses for long periods of times at arm's length distance on screens, or worse, at even a phone's distance where it's so close you're almost cross-eyed, the more one needs glasses to compensate for further distances. This reveals how we can help slowly recorrect our eyes ourselves to rebalance some visual imbalance by not wearing our glasses all the time if we need them, like a crutch, but instead focus as much as possible uncorrected at distances which we are weakest at, training our eyes to recorrect for the areas in which they are lacking in. This is yet another benefit by encouraging your little people to be out in nature so their growing eyes can spend more time focusing at longer distances, likely helping reduce the need for wearing eyeglasses later on in their lives. We, as someone who's worn glasses for half our life, spend years and years, beginning in high school and then in our collegiate years, going to the optometrist every 6 months or so. Then later in life, as a working professional with health insurance coverage, we did the same. More recently, when we became more freelance and more self-employed, we started going to the optometrist less because of having to do with what in the US is called paying out of pocket. Meaning if you don't have private health insurance coupled to your job, you're screwed and thus have to pay for it all yourself. Which got us realizing that going to set scheduled appointments where we pay them each time, even if nothing has changed, is a scam. Since everyone is different, how do they know how often we need to get our eyes checked? Standardizing a schedule for all people is fallacious. We've also come to the same realization about going to the dentist. They say you need to go to the dentist every 6 months. Bullshit! How come someone who eats copious amounts of sugar every day and someone who eats no sugar need to go to the dentist on the same schedule? Surely because the American Dental Association lobbied Congress to make it the standardized gospel in the public zeitgeist that every 6 months should be the de facto standard for recurring customers frequenting their industry. In our later and more mature adult years, we've kept our eyes very plateaued in terms of their prescription because we are very conscious to take our glasses off anytime there's no need to not wear them to prevent overwearing them. So for about a decade, we have only had 2 pairs of eyeglasses. One nice pair, which we would wear to a gallery opening, for example, and our oldest and now junky pair, which we would wear when we do, let's say, yard work. Both of which we paid probably somewhere between $100 to $300 for. After many years of our oldest and now junkiest pair having broken numerous times while still being somewhat wearable, but were scratched all to hell and had the coating peeling off so bad that they were barely even able to be seen through, our nicer pair we dropped a few times as well too, and sure enough, 3 times as a charm, the last drop was the kill shot and popped off one of the hinges, and after numerous years of ownership, it was now game over, unwearable. So after having listened to this past higher side conversation, after both pairs of our designer glasses were now in total life support and we had avoided getting a new pair for years and or going back to the optometrist so that they could only tell us that our eyes were the same and that will be $120 for this 30-minute consult, please, we knew it was time for new eyeglasses in a new way. through one of numerous online retailers that bypass the glasses monopoly and sell prescription glasses at a fair markup, as opposed to the criminal markup. However, we didn't know at this time what a prescription was, which is something that anyone who has glasses should keep a record of. So we decided to stop by a chain store in the shopping mall, which we had previously acquired one of our previous pair of glasses from, Lens Crafters. Now, the key component here is that we knew we didn't want to buy their con job glasses, but instead our goal was to just get our prescription. So when we first went into the store, which was totally empty of customers and just had 3 employees behind the counter, we initially played it as though we were curious if they could fix our previously purchased glasses from them that were basically now broken, which we had brought in to hand to them. They deemed them unfixable, and before they could advocate a complete replacement of them at the criminal markup, we then asked, "Can we get our prescription, please?" At which point, none of the 3 employees looked happy or proactively willing to give it to us. The one gal who we gave our information to looked it up, and her first response was, "It's expired," which was an underlying way of saying that you haven't had your eyes checked within our sanctioned period of time and are overdue to make an appointment to have them rechecked. So you can pay us again and again on a regular schedule, for our industry controls the testing and scheduling settings to see how much more dependent your eyes have gotten by our own advocacy of overdependence, in which we ourselves responded by saying, "I would like it nonetheless." She then scribbled it onto a yellow sticky, and we were off without paying them a dime, thank you very much. So as a keyboard warrior, now armed with our prescription, after searching high and low inside the internet tubes, we found a quite decent selection of, shall we say, very reasonably priced prescription glasses websites, much of which looked to be outside of the monopoly, yet ultra junky and scammy. One eyeglass company's website we finally became sold on because in the About page of their website, they straight up said some truth, that they are going to let you in on a little secret. There's no reason for massive markups on glasses. If you do some research, which for most people entails typing things into Google, regarding a search term such as the highest retail markups via different sales categories, you'll learn a lot. Industries such as alcohol, weddings, funerals, school textbooks, clothing, especially women's shoes, and pharmaceuticals have massive, egregious markups, sometimes 20x, 50x, or 100x more than otherwise needing to make a profit. But there is one industry that blows all those away, the prescription eyeglass industry. So how much is that markup, which I've previously deemed criminal in this industry? Commonly 1,000x. My father, for example, has a pair of glasses which cost him $1,200, and they probably cost $1.20 to manufacture. That's 1,000% markup. At the same time, we'd been thinking, how can people in the third world with really bad eyesight afford any more than $5 for a pair of prescription glasses? There has to be companies with a conscience out there who would provide such. This particular online manufacturer that we decided to try also says that they're all about servicing the third world and for eliminating this pain of needless, through-the-roof retail pricing. Now, we're certainly not for promoting any sort of third world slave labor either. We were in a former industry which engaged in a race to the bottom by constant attempts to offshore and outsource itself to always find cheaper and cheaper labor in poorer countries. That is the opposite problem and equally off balance to that of ludicrous markups. What we would most like to support with our dollars is a triple bottom line, smaller business eyeglass company which manufactures locally, pays its unionized employees well, sources its material as sustainably as possible, and is making a reasonable profit. That would be a point of equilibrium within the social and capital. Yet wherever they are located, since the long con has been making folks like my father think that they need to spend $1,200 on a small plastic frame holding 2 small pieces of curved glass, these glasses on this website range in price from $5 to $30, with additional scratch-resistant, blue-blocking sunglasses and even polarized sunglass upgrade options. They are selling them for the proper markup of perhaps 3x or 5x over the $1 to $2 manufacturing cost. So they are still even making a profit. In addition to its somewhat more transparent company about page piquing my eye, they had a massive selection of both men and women's glasses. The web page itself did also have a slightly cheesy look, and we weren't totally confident, but we ordered a few pairs and waited nonetheless. When they came in the mail, we were blown away. These eyeglasses were virtually identical in quality to all the previous eyeglasses that have hugely inflated prices that we had fallen for purchasing in our more stupid past. And these cheaper ones came with an equally nice premium case and cleaning cloth included. We were so impressed that we've gone back and bought a few more, including a couple pairs of prescription sunglasses for under $20 each. This particular company's name, which we feel is a nugget of gold, we've shared with patrons of our work. But we also share this small story with you to highlight that by starting with knowledge, then being willing to adjust a fallacious "it's always been this way" pattern based on that knowledge, in this case led to bypassing a monopoly. For a small action like this one is just one step of money we can all do to correct larger systems into adapting to more equilibrium.